Welcome back to the Respect the Drive podcast. I'm Tedward, and I'm coming to you from my remote studio today. Well, my house. The rest of the episode is recorded at Garage 42 in Acton, Massachusetts, where I store my cars. So, in the event that you're not thrilled with whatever audio quality I'm giving you here, the regular stuff is coming up throughout the rest of the episode. But the last couple of weeks have been absolutely insane. Thankful for Garage 42 because I actually got a new set of track wheels for the Honda Civic Type R. They've been delivered there. Bridgestone is sending me some RE71 RSs. They can mount the tires there. This is the beauty of Garage 42. It's fleet management more than car storage. So luckily, when I do need things done there, they can just get done there. If I need a car transported, they'll do it. It's fantastic. So anyway, look into them if you need a place for your vehicle, or if you just have too many vehicles and you don't have time to manage them, whether it's oil changes, inspection stickers, or service appointments, all that good stuff. Go check them out. Call Josh at G42. But I went out to Colorado a couple weeks ago, or last week really, and it was just a travel nightmare, which now, having seen this horrible crash that occurred in Reagan Airport at DCA, not such a nightmare. I got there okay. I mean, it was frustrating because it was during a cold snap. So the idea was we were going out to Steamboat Springs, Colorado for snow driving with Bridgestone. They're going to put us out in GR Corollas and a Supra and 4Runners and all kinds of good stuff in order to get some great low grip, low friction surface seat time with some great instructors out on this incredible track that they've built out in essentially it's a ranch that they flood with water. So that way it's got nice, like thick layers of ice, and then it snows and snows and snows and snows. So you just have this beautiful surface to play around in and get all kinds of different elevation changes as well. It's not simply flat, which I think is actually one of the most fascinating parts about this. A lot of times you end up on lake beds and it's great, but you don't get a lot of elevation changes. This actually had some cool elevation. But about 100 feet out, or 100 miles out from Atlanta, because I was flying Boston, Atlanta, Steamboat, suddenly the plane turns around. And I look at the guy next to me and I'm like, hey, did they announce anything? He's like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, we're not going to Atlanta. He's like, what do you mean we're not going to Atlanta? I'm like, well, we're not going to Atlanta. I know enough about aviation growing up in it that I know that a holding pattern is different than turning around at 30,000 feet. So apparently what had happened was all of this nasty cold weather that came through the north and southeast of the United States, Atlanta was fine. They were okay at the airport because they've got the equipment. They can do, it's a big airport, but unfortunately all the highways basically shut down and none of the staff could get there. So by the time we were about to land, they diverted us to Raleigh, and Raleigh's not a very big airport. Raleigh is like Providence. Raleigh is like, you're probably not getting where you need to go unless you're very, very lucky. So fortunately, I did get very, very lucky. I managed to jump on a flight to Denver and then get a rental car, which was a 36,000 mile Chevy Impala or Malibu or whatever the heck it was. It was a front wheel drive CVT 4-cylinder with horrific all seasons. And I drove that from Denver out to Steamboat through Rabbit Ear Pass in the snow. I'm pretty sure that's illegal because I think what you have to have is either all-wheel drive with 3 peak rated snow tires, or tires that are 3 peak rated, or you need to have chains. And they have pretty strict chain up laws. I had neither. I had front wheel drive and probably bald all seasons, and it was so dicey in some of the sections of that road driving out there. I mean, I knew I was in for it, but had this been any other event, I would have just gone back to Boston. There was a JetBlue flight that would have taken me right home from Raleigh. It would have been a short day, but it would have been a bust, but it would have been a short day. But the thing is, the Bridgestone guys and the crowd that was there was absolutely worth the 23-hour travel day to get from Boston to Colorado, because I had the most fun. And yeah, I was sleep deprived. I was coming off of that flu that everybody seems to be getting. It's not COVID. It wasn't RSV. It was just this nasty flu that left me with a fever and a head cold. And I managed to kind of get myself together just in time for this trip. And I've got a ton of footage from it. I'm editing it now. It's one of those events where when I look at the footage, I could just kind of throw it in there and let it go and see what happens. But like, I'm trying to take my time with it because I want it to be special. I want it to be exactly what I want it to be, if that makes any sense. Because when I do like a car review, I know exactly how I'm doing this. When you go to an event like this where it's like a driving school or it's organized in a way that it's not like necessarily up to you how things are going to go, suddenly the order of operations as a creator just goes out the window, and then you either end up over filming, under filming. It's tricky. So those ones always take me the longest to edit. Kind of like when I went out to Portland, Oregon with Bridgestone, or Firestone, I should say, when we were testing out all terrain tires, the XTs, XT2s, and MT2s, and all this other stuff. But it was worth every minute of that nightmare travel to get there, and I had a blast. So, shout out to the Bridgestone team with David Davis and Karina and all these folks out there, because we just had the best time. But today on the show, I have a New England local who is known around here for organizing rallies. This is a big rally guy. And rallies to me, and I grill him on this a little bit. Rallies I have a love-hate relationship with. I think rallies got me into the car scene before I could drive. I was obsessed with, anything gumball, anything cannonball, anything bull run, all of these sort of like rich and famous supercars traversing land as fast as they can, getting to the fancy hotel, partying, doing it again. Like that to me was always really fascinating. And I do still enjoy that to an extent. However, over time, as we see with Cannonball write-ups and magazines and journals and all this stuff, the temperature changes. It fluctuates back and forth from hot to cold in terms of the level of acceptance from society. People are always going to hate you if you drive over the speed limit, even if it's 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. So when you get into a supercar, or 30, 40, 50 supercars, and drive them somewhere, it doesn't always have the intended hero status, let's say, that you'd like to experience when you're driving. And I don't think rallies are going anywhere, but I do think there's a strategic way to do these things with the correct number of people and the correct crowd in terms of mindset and driving tone. Respect the drive, I think, really embodies the idea of, I'm not telling you not to drive fast. I'm not telling you not to enjoy your car. I am telling you that there is a time and a place. And I think rallies really have to find that sweet spot of time and a place, because a lot of times you're leaving a major city, going somewhere rural where there's great roads, Tail of the Dragon or Chirrahalla Skyway, or you go out west into ACH and all these kind of fun things, or you're just out in the desert, there's no one out there. You get your kicks out, like driving pretty fast on some empty roads, but we don't want to be passing people at like 200 miles an hour. That's not a good look. And it never ever helps the car community when there's an accident and then you've got a car wrapped in stickers that everybody can call back to. It's not great. But Asa is with me today. He's a rally guy. Ace of Rallies is his Instagram handle. He runs now the Crown Rally, which he's just acquired. He runs the East Coast Run and Squad Driven, which is like a local sort of car community here in New England. A lot of different types of people. We're talking supercar people. We're talking Hellcat Chargers. We're talking, anyone and everyone in between. But he's made his mark in terms of trying to like make this a sort of like lifestyle event for a lot of people who this is what their vacation is. They'll spend 9 days at a time with this guy driving around the country. It's pretty wild. So we'll talk to him, and then I hope you're doing okay. I know the winter is brutal. Despite the fact that it's not even that brutal of a winter. It's cold, but it's still not snowing that much. I mean, 10 years ago, Boston got like, I don't know, 100 inches or some absurd amount of snow, and we just kept getting pummeled and pummeled and pummeled. And like, those are the winters that like I remember living in the city and having to experience like, oh, we need to work together. Like, that's a weird thing. When you live in the city, you may live in a building where there's like 20, 30 people, but when you never interact with these people ever, you might like give a creepy like that little like half smile on the elevator or whatever if you have to, just because you accidentally made eye contact, or like you walk by somebody or whatever. Like I don't know, when you're in the city, like almost you have more neighbors but you interact with less of them. But in that storm, you had to, because if you weren't, you were going to fight. You were going to end up I mean, people really did. They ended up fighting for spaces on the streets and like putting out their cones and their shopping carts or their lawn chairs or whatever the heck. But, there really was a camaraderie about getting through that storm with the snow. I mean, you couldn't even get a bus down some of the roads that that are just normal bus routes. It was a very trying time, and I think during trying times, people usually manage to find their way through their frustration to be reasonable and to be helpful. And I actually find myself being more helpful in stressful situations than in situations where I'm like, I don't have to. I don't know. I guess I'm a game time guy versus I have a lot of anxiety outside of a crisis, but in a crisis, I'm usually pretty good. And then I'll reflect on it incessantly for the rest of my life. That's the, the power of anxiety and OCD. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. But anyway, let's get into the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. And this is a fun one, so please enjoy.
Asa.
Tedward.
What are you doing here? All right, so you're confusing me because you said you flew in here from Colorado.
Yeah, so I do rallies, which we'll get to. But I was out scouting for our rally in June, Crown Rally West. So we're going from Denver to Vegas. So I have to fly out a bunch of months in advance to meet with hotels and figure all that fun stuff out. So
did you so I know you from being around the Boston area with Squad Driven and East Coast Run.
Yep.
Is that the typical, like that's the things that you as an individual were like, I need to do these things?
Yeah. So essentially, long story, relatively long. I was in college, had an internship with this rally company, Crown Rally. Loved the rally concept, giving back, car stuff. And I was like, how can I make this my job? I moved to the East Coast and decided I'm going to keep doing this. But I was working a few other jobs to pay the bills. And then the rallies and giving back was the hobby.
So you were from originally like the Colorado area?
No. So I was born in Boston.
Oh, okay. And you went out there for school.
I went out to Minneapolis for school. Yeah, dude, I've been all over the country.
Got it. I'm like, dude, not many people go that direction. Not many people are like, oh, I'm a Denver guy and now I'm in Boston.
Right.
Like, that's a rough.
Usually it's the opposite, I feel.
To me, that's like getting punched in the face because you're just like, oh, people are not relaxed at all. You can only go the other direction.
Right. I met people, I think on the airplane, this lovely woman was talking to me and she was like, yeah, like family, my daughter went to school in Boston and like, because she was asking me, are you from here or whatever? And she was pretty much just like, yeah, like the people there are kind of rude. I was like, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Like that's the norm, I guess, right? We're used to it.
We're just cold.
Right. Cold, direct, whatever.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead. So
no, you're good.
So you come back, you're starting up, like, was it your intent to, after interning with these people, to like immediately kind of start a thing on your own?
No. So I was interning with them during school in Minneapolis, and then I went to the East Coast, and I was like, I wanted, I didn't know how to make it profitable immediately. So I was like, working, I was bartending and I was working a marketing gig. And then on the side, I was doing these events and creating this, it's not a club, but a network, Squad Driven, whatever it is.
Yeah. It's a group of enthusiasts.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. A group of enthusiasts, we all share the same bond. It's wild. And again, I don't want to go on a tangent, but everyone's from different walks of life, and right. Cars with a bond. Anyways, yes. And then I started Squad Driven, and then my big rally ended up kind of evolving into the East Coast Run, which was everything from like, we would do sometimes shorter ones, like the shorter ones that we did were up to like Burlington, Vermont or Bar Harbor, but we've gone like the longest one in 23 was Maine to Miami, the whole East Coast. So
how do you make that interesting? Because to me, if you were like, hey, we got to go to Miami, I'd be like, oh my God.
Not direct. Not direct. Like it took 9 days.
Okay. Because 95 sucks. Yeah. It's the worst drive of all time, basically.
Terrible.
I would rather just be in Kansas.
Yes. Yeah. Or like, what is it, 80 through Pennsylvania? Like that's the worst road of the entire.
Super boring. But like, at least with like those ones, you're like, well, at least no one's here. But when you drive, when someone's like trying to pitch, like, hey, we're going to drive from like Maine to Miami, that's when I'm like, oh God, this better be interesting because that you have to drive through every nightmare major city.
Yeah. Well, no, we went around it, so we go the long way.
That's great, and that's the thing. You do have to have a group of people who's willing to put in the miles and the energy and the time for that kind of stuff. Because I don't know that everybody really understands like the sort of time commitment and the mileage commitment of what these look like. Because a lot of people will say, oh, it's what's that? 1,300 miles maybe.
The way we did it was probably like 2,000 or 3,000.
Like that's what a normal person is going to look like. Oh, it's this. Whereas like you're going to be like, no, we have to take like B roads that are interesting. We have to go somewhere that's interesting. We have to like make this an occasion.
Right.
That to me is where you're like, whoa, like people are dedicating serious amounts of time to these types of events. Like this is their vacation.
Yeah.
This is the thing they do.
That's how I explain it to non-car people. I'm like, it's a car person's vacation, right? And like sometimes if people ask me what I do, I'm like, I'll tell them, marketing and events in the car world if I don't really want to talk about it. Or if I'm, more so talking about it, I explain like I plan kind of all-inclusive vacations for automotive enthusiasts. Sure. And, part of it involves a charity aspect and all that stuff. But, boilerplate, quick sentence. I plan vacations for car enthusiasts.
Yeah. And I guess that is how you have to market it, because I think a lot of people will look at it and just be like, well, like, oh, that's expensive. You're like, well, yeah, you're staying in nice places. You're eating good food. And like, there's also activities and things that you might be doing on the way. It's a planned trip.
It's not like we're just driving with a group and I'm like, give me a bunch of money to come drive.
Yes. Yeah, it's not just an entry fee.
Right.
Now, the other thing I'm curious about is like, how do you curate this in a way that, for example, I know a lot of different types of people that do rallies. I am the more like, I like the drive. I'm not going to go super duper crazy, partially because like my job depends on me having a license, right? Like fair. I can't get arrested. Like it's just a no. So it's like someone might be like, oh, I passed you at 170 and you were only I'm like, yeah, well,
I want my job.
You're a fucking billionaire, and B, like I need this, like, right. So I'll choose my battles. I'll do what I need to do. But at the same time, I also, if I arrive somewhere and we're like, oh, cool, there's like this big party, it can be difficult to be like, oh, right, like this is day 1 of 3 or day 1 of 5 or 9. Mm-hmm. I can't drink every night. I can't like literally party every night. And you have to figure out what's that balance, because if you let people go hard, especially off the bat, they will. And they're going to be like really regretting their own decisions that like you basically encourage them to make, because you're like, well, this is the party. This is what we're doing. So we'll get into like the lore of like how this kind of stuff got into it with like Gumball and Bull Run and all that bullshit. But like, how do you try to space out? Because I mean, to you, at some point you're like, you went from sort of like someone who experienced this maybe as a participant or an intern, or was like, oh wow, like look at this. At some point you have to be like a curator, and you're no longer just like along for the ride. You're someone who's like, okay, we need to tempo these people. It's like a Disneyland park where you're like, I need them to go through these places so that way they have time for this, and this while they wait for that and blah, blah. How do you measure that? How do you what are your metrics for like making something entertaining, but also not like burning them the fuck out and getting the entire rally arrested on day 1?
Lots of trial and error, I'll be honest. Lots of trial and error. I would say, in the beginning of rallying, or when you start a rally, right? A lot of people are like, I'm going to get as much driving in as possible, and we're going to drive all day. We're going to wake up early. We're going to get there late. And, almost every rally makes the same mistake. They wake up, they leave at 7, 8 o'clock, whatever it is. They're driving, they get to the hotel at 8, 9 o'clock, and then you're exhausted from driving all day. And then you're supposed to your point, everyone's like, let's go drink. And then, by the time the first day is done, you're feel like shit, you're like ready. I'm ready to go home.
Yeah. I'm in my 30s. Like there's not a situation in which I like have like 7 drinks and then think, what I'd love to do is car for another
wake up early and drive. But no, seriously. So I've kind of learned like there are certain people that they've adapted over the years to like, they do that. They know their bodies are expecting. Seriously, it's like to wake up early, drive. I've tempered the driving, whatever the word is. I aim for like probably 3 to 4 hours before lunch, 3 to 4 hours after lunch. That's probably the longer side. But, we wake up, we leave around 9, lunch, 12 to 2, get to the hotel by 4 or 5 o'clock. People have an hour or 2 to chill, get dressed, whatever, and then dinner. So kind of to answer your question on like the evening and how to tame people, we do different events on different nights, right? Like I've learned early on, like I used to do open bars almost every night because I was like, people are paying big money.
Yeah.
Open bar, right? And people loved it in theory, but to your point, the first night people see open bar, they drink way too much. And then the morning of like the actual launch, people are just like hungover and miserable, and it's the event hasn't even started yet.
Yeah,
you know?
no, they don't. We are like butt dogs with food in our plate, and if there's an unlimited amount of food, we're gonna eat it.
Right.
And like
you don't have to drink, but people are like, open bar.
yeah, well, and the problem with an open bar is that you feel like, especially if it's like a vacation thing, you're like, well, I paid for it.
Right. You have to get your money's worth.
So I got to get my money's worth,
Right,
right?
right.
Whereas like if you're kind of just like, oh, we'll serve you a couple cocktails, here's your tickets or whatever the fuck, and then you're like, cool, like because if someone gave me 2 tickets, I'm like, I'm gonna have 2 old fashions,
Right.
and then I'm gonna
pace yourself and you'll be good, right? Or that's it.
because I'm gonna be like, oh well, it's because it's not even a financial thing. It's just that it's just like, well, this is what I was,
Right.
This is what I paid for,
Right.
So I'm gonna get what
so
I
get
paid
2
for.
drinks. I'll have a good time.
Yep, and then that's where we end up. Whereas like, yeah, this occurs on like press lunches all the time because they put us up in nice places, and then oh, we're gonna have dinner and a cocktail hour and all this stuff, and then I'm like, I have to like consciously be like, do not.
Don't get hammered.
Because I'm not an alcoholic. I don't even like drinking that much. But in a social situation with 50, 60 people that I don't know, it feels better to have a drink in my hand.
Literally the concept of just having a drink in your hand. Absolutely. I get it.
And when you're like, when it's a full open bar, sometimes you like let's say instead of ordering your drink, you're like, oh, they have some special thing that they're going to serve, right? You take a sip, you're like, oh, that's not really for me. I better finish this fast. So then I can get the drink that I actually want. That's the kiss of death for me.
And downhill.
So no, all right. So that's pretty smart.
Yeah. So we stopped doing that most of the time. So now it's either like strictly, and we'll talk about this later, but now that I'm in Crown Rally, liability wise, we just don't serve alcohol.
Smart.
Like cash bar only. If you want to go buy alcohol, go buy alcohol.
Okay. This brings me to a really this is what I have all the questions about.
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
When you have a group of friends, okay, and you're just like, hey, we're going from A to B, we're going to have a good time. Like if me and like 5 of my friends just like go and quote unquote rally to like Tail the Dragon or wherever the hell, that's just us. We're just doing a thing. When you're like an organization, you're accepting money, you're accepting like all this thing, like there's waivers, there's all this great stuff. I'm sure your lawyers are consistently like, oh my God, you guys are the worst. Like, what are you doing? Who are these people? And then not to mention, you're like, creating marketing materials, and the marketing materials always have to be like hot, right? What's crazy to me is that like I've been on a bunch of rallies, and when I see the marketing materials, I'm like, oh, that wasn't even close to what I saw on this fucking thing. Like it's like, all right, for example, my team has done 3 cannonballs.
Like coast to coast cannonballs?
Yes. We have the 2nd and 3rd fastest times across the country.
Oh, sick.
I cannot produce these videos. Like,
right.
I have stuff that's up. I do have things that are like up, and they're as tame as I can kind of make this look. But there is stuff that I'm like never, ever, ever, ever going to see the light of day, because the reality of getting across the country in 25 hours is speed. I'm sorry, it's speed. And like I'm not an anti-speed guy, but as I've grown older, I'm also just like, I don't care about it as much, in the way that I'm cool with doing a quickie pull, hitting my 150, 160, 170, depending on the car, right? That could be a really slow 170 if you're in like...
Right. 3 days later.
Yes, exactly. But like you're in an Aventador SVJ Roadster. You're
2
like,
seconds or
let's
whatever.
hit it. Like, oh, cool. And then like, let's bring it down. I don't need to get arrested. I don't need to put anybody in danger, blah, blah, blah. How do you even manage to like curate a group of people that you as a business owner feels comfortable like unleashing into the world? Like, because I'm sure that's something that'll help you like lose sleep.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking. And that's obviously my biggest worry, as that's probably the worst thing that could go wrong, right? As a rally organizer, is something happening. So, we do everything possible, waivers, I tell people, and on my squad driven things, on my past squad driven rallies, it's more, I am kind of leading by example, and like, I'll be in the front, not saying you have to stay behind me, but like, I'll set a decent pace. I know where I'm going. People trust that I know where I'm going, and I'll show you a good time. But like, to your point, we'll do those pulls, and we'll have a good time when there's nobody around, and we'll, get on it, whatever. Yes. Bring it back down, and then there's a time and a place, is the way I explain it to everybody.
Yes.
So that's how a majority of the time, especially with the squad driven things, like I kind of just like am a pace car, if you will. With the Crown Rally stuff, it's a little different. It's a bigger group, and it's more spread out.
How many people are on that one?
So now this is their like the comeback tour. So like now we're down to 50 to 75 cars per rally.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but it used to be double that.
That's untenable. That's
wild.
That's too much.
I agree with you.
Where do you fucking park to eat? Like,
it's a nightmare.
All right. So let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
I don't, is this the first time we've met face to face? Like, have we met before?
Briefly. Remember, I was walking by in where was I walking? Portland, downtown Portland, and you yelled at me across the street. I was like, I know you.
This was this weird thing where like I'm walking through Portland, Old Port, and I see this R8 go by, and I'm like, Asa. And the funny thing was, I like yelled, and then I'm thinking, he doesn't know who the fuck I am. I just know you from the internet. Like I'm an Instagram follower. Like I'm just like, oh, so I sent you a message like, oh, hey, I think I just blah, blah, blah. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, that was one of those weird things where I'm like, oh, this is what happens when people yell to me. And I'm like, what the fuck? And because I'm like, oh, I just see you so much on like Instagram.
It's like we know each other.
Yeah. So I was like, and then I realized that, like, because my sister goes, oh, who's that? I'm like, I don't think he knows who I am.
No, I've known you through the car world. Same thing, followers and mutual friends and all that stuff.
But like that was funny to me. But one of so the reason I bring that up was because like I think maybe a week or two later you were asking me like, hey, like Portland? Like I'm trying to set up a drive something. Like, do you know somewhere that has a lot of parking?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was planning a rally to go to Portland.
Yeah, you were gonna do like a lunch thing, and I was like honored. I'm like, oh, I do kind of know Portland. And then I'm thinking, every time I go to Portland, all I'm thinking of is like, where the fuck am I to park?
Right.
And
right.
so I'm
as
like,
one person.
Yeah. And as one individual. And I'm like, I have a couple little secrets, but like, I'm like, I don't know how to do this for like 30, 40 cars. Like, so I had a couple little places where I'm like, well, there's kind of lots here or that, but how do you even manage to organize that many cars going to interesting places? Because this is what blows my mind is I'm stressed out as a one person. I will just not go to
right.
Like
if you go and you circle the block, there's no spots. I'm going home.
I'm not even hungry anymore.
Yep,
I'll go somewhere else. I'll go to the grocery store.
Right.
I do like my friends, even when they're like, hey, we're going out in Boston. I'm like, you are, I'm not.
Yeah,
like,
where are you parking?
I'll park at your place and then we can like
Uber.
take the Uber or I'll take the train in. I hate parking. So as an organizer, like you have to kind of curate these things into a way that people really feel like they have like arrived and that there's a sense of occasion on the arrival where it's like, I'm special because I pulled into my like my liveried Hellcat or whatever,
Exactly.
How do you find these places?
It's tough. And to your point, that kind of, being the quote unquote smaller, but also bigger number that, the 50 to 75, it's easier is, all relative, right?
Yeah.
But it's easier than 100 plus cars. But, for example, like when I was in Denver, that's kind of a limiting factor for hotels, right? So, So I was looking between 3 different hotels. The first hotel I went to said, valet, we're valet parking only. Like you guys cannot park your car.
Not a fucking chance.
I was like,
that works for about 20% of the people.
That's a generous number.
Yeah.
And like, again, I'm like politely explaining. And most of the time, I explain it to them and like, okay, like you guys can drive your cars. You can park in our valet lot. You're paying some ridiculous price that the valet parking is, but you can park yourself. I'm like, that's totally fine.
That's the deal.
That's great.
Yep.
If we can park it ourselves in a safe area, we will pay whatever it costs.
People don't understand this because when you are, if you've ever dated a non-enthusiast or whatever, and you like go to a fancy restaurant and you're like, and like, this is the opposite reaction they've ever heard in their entire life. It's like, oh shit, they have valet parking.
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I think I saw a back entrance. I did that in Maine. I was up in Kennebunk and we went to this really, really fucking nice restaurant. And as I was pulling in, I'm like, shit. So I did a quick U-turn and I snuck in the back and I parked it. And then the valet, it's so embarrassing because I'm like, I'm not trying to like shit on this guy, right? Like I don't want to make him feel bad, but I'm like trying to not walk by him. And so I went around and luckily he was parking another car. I got in, had dinner. On my way out, he goes, nice M5. And I was like, thank you.
Shit.
And it was just like really cute because I was like, he goes, no, I get it. And I was like, thanks for being a G. Like, but okay, so that's tricky. I think people understand like what rallies are and how they work and what's going on. But I think what I'm curious of is like in 2025, I feel like the temperature of rallies has changed dramatically. Like Cannonball is always a good litmus test of like whether or not cars are cool or speed is cool because it changes.
You mean like if someone cares about the cannon or knows about the Cannonball, that's their test?
Are you a hero or are you a villain?
Fair.
These are the only options. And so every time Cannonball records are set, you either get one or the other. You get someone who ends up on Letterman, like Alex Roy.
Okay.
You get someone who's on the Today Show, like at Bullion.
Yep.
Or you get people who set runs and then there are like fucking slam pieces, like the dangerous nightmares that are, pervading our streets with their fast Audis and debadged, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're driving a bomb. There's extra fuel on board. They do this whole hit pieces. And the same magazines, for example, like, I don't remember which, but let's say like Road and Track or Car and Driver, they'll switch their tune back and forth. So like one season, it might be like, all hail the most American sport, shoving the laws in the faces of blah, 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 all this stuff. They're like, you're a real man driving this like ethereal coast to coast, like path of your life, this journey. Whereas then you get the other side where they're like, Cannonball is over. This is stupid. We don't need to do this anymore. You're putting innocent families at risk. You're going to hit a minivan and kill 12 kids. And like, so I feel like it goes back and forth a lot. And with rallies, I've been on rallies where I've rolled into a town and felt like I was like a fucking hero, right? You're driving in something
like a parade, right?
Like, they're
thank you.
Thank you. Everyone's like, rev your engine. The kids are happy. The parents are happy. People are cheering for you. And you're like, this is fucking wild. I've also, almost on the same rallies, pulled into other places where people are like, fucking kill yourselves. Get the fuck out of here. We hate you.
It's bad.
I don't know which I'm going to receive. I never know where we're at. And I understand, like, if someone's just seen you do a bunch of egregious shit, like, especially when, like, day one, like, if you're leaving and it's even close to, like, a rush hour-y time.
Right.
Good luck. Like,
sorry, everybody.
It's bad. It's really rough. And you're like, oh, God. It's like corner one in a Formula One race. You're just like, please, God, let us everyone get through this first, like, hour. Rough. What have you seen? Like, because the Gumball days, the Bull Run days, it was just heroes. You were a hero. It didn't matter. It was Smokey and the Bandit. Everyone was on your side minus the law. Okay. I don't know that it's even like that anymore. And I think it changes. And how have you seen the changes from like hero to villain status? Or like, how do you mitigate that feeling and make people feel like they're doing something they should be doing?
Dude, it literally varies, to your point, based on, the town you're in or who you're with or how you're driving. Cause like I would consider myself a decent driver, but also I know when and where to do dumb shit.
Yeah.
And I've experienced both. So like, and I am aware, like, if I'm being an asshole or if I'm driving quicker than I should be going, or if I'm driving normal. But like, as you know, a lot of enthusiast cars are sometimes louder than they should be, just driving the speed limit. And it could be a loud car and someone's yelling at you to slow down, which it happens to me all the time. When I have my S4, my Mustang, going maybe 5 over. Like if I was in a Civic or a Honda Pilot, like nobody would blink an eye.
Yeah,
but
I've gotten yelled at. I always only get yelled at in like the slowest cars I'm driving. I always get yelled at in like a little Austin Healey or like.
But it's loud, right? Or no?
Yeah, like it was pretty. Like it was like a little Austin Healey 100. Like it's not even a 3000. It's like a little guy. It's a 4-cylinder. And
it's like
I'm
redlining, trying to go the speed limit.
Yeah, I gave this guy was running toward me on like a back road in like Lincoln or Concord or something, and I gave him like a full lane to run, and I saw his hand started to go up, and I'm like, I'm gonna get the coolest fucking wave like this guy, and then he just flipped me off and was like, fuck you, and I'm like, I'm going 30.
And I did.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
And I have this on camera, and the thing is, I'm like, I think it's funny a little bit because I'm like, what a prick. Like what a what a prick.
Who pissing your Wheaties or whatever.
Not to mention,
like,
I'm positive that the people who do that also drive like 30 in a parking lot. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Those are the people.
100%.
Whereas I'm like, bro, like you'll look at me like you've gone 170 miles an hour. I'm like, yeah, I'm like a fucking open like airfield basically of highway.
With nobody around.
With nothing happening at all. Like if I die, it's on me.
Right.
I get it. But like these are the people that are like, they'll fly through a fucking neighborhood. They'll fly through a Whole Foods parking lot in their like, Audi SQ7.
Right.
And I'm the asshole.
Right.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean,
all the time.
But when you're like, as the organizer, how do you like manage the chaos?
Dude, I get calls, emails on the entire rally. Anytime we stop, I'll open my phone and like, if I'm getting a phone call while we're driving, I answer while we're driving. But like, I'll stop and I'll see it on Facebook, right? Like Karen, whatever, commented on our Facebook event. Like, I was driving down Route 1 and a parade of you guys flew by me at crazy speeds and shook my car and I almost died and I had to drive off the dude. Like, again, are there people that drive sometimes worse than they should around people that they shouldn't. Yes, absolutely.
100%.
I'm not going to lie. It's, you know, it's,
No,
I know it
that's the
happens.
thing. The reality is like we've all seen it, and you've been like, okay, let that group. That's a different wave of the rally. Like
Exactly,
let that
right.
wave occur over there. Maybe we'll have a little chat at lunch.
If it's someone that I know who it is, and if I know they do, if someone tells me someone's doing something very stupid, I will pull people aside and be like, listen, dude, like we're here to have a good time. Don't be an idiot. You know, there's a difference.
It's a huge difference.
I pull people aside, and like, again, most of the reception from when I've pulled someone aside, and I'm thinking about this particular guy in general from my particular event most recently, he was like, my bad. Like, I know I did that. Like, I'm sorry.
It's funny
And
because
I'm
like,
thank you. You know,
well, and I genuinely believe like the enthusiast friend or enthusiast like role model, let's say, which I would like to think that the two of us can be, are more trusted than law enforcement when it comes to telling someone that they're being an asshole. Like I think,
oh, the response would be different.
yeah,
Right,
I feel
right,
like
right.
if that guy gets pulled over, he's gonna be like,
Fuck you,
look at my,
officer.
he's gonna fucking frame his ticket,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And but meanwhile, if like he didn't get pulled over, but I saw what he did, I'm like, oh, that pass was not.
You shouldn't have done
it.
that. Yeah.
Don't do that. Then they're gonna go, oh shit.
Like, you're right.
Like, and the thing is, I think a lot of these people, like I remember, the other thing is I started this so young. Like I started driving like this in groups
Right,
like
right.
this when I was in like college. And I got, when you're young and you survive it, you see.
I'm invincible.
Yeah, you see what's obviously moronic.
Right.
And so then you start to be like, oh, well, like the older, you know, if you're a freshman and you're like driving, when a senior tells you, knock that shit off, or like, hey, don't make that was a bullshit pass. Don't do that. You listen. You're
Right,
like,
right.
oh, I don't want like Kyle to be mad at me.
Right,
or whatever.
right.
I look up to him. He's that guy, right? So a lot of these people, they entered like the car thing in their like late 20s or their early 30s because they like finally got a little bit of money. And then someone's like, oh, they entered this because it was like, I wanted a Porsche or a, you know, an M car. And so they buy it because they finally have a little bit of money in their 30s. And then someone's like, oh, you've got this. You should come on this. And you're like, they're like, whoa, it's a place where I can exploit this shit. But they
Right.
don't have any etiquette.
Right.
So
experience, etiquette, knowledge of how to drive with people.
it's almost like whenever you go to a track day, there's always like a little session where they're like, hey, driver meeting.
Right,
We're
right.
just going to reiterate what these fucking flags mean. Please blend correctly. Don't cut across the track when you come out of the pit, stuff like that. Like just basic stuff.
And then what happens every time?
Every time someone does something stupid. But how do you manage like a lot of the drivers meetings in like a rally are going to basically just be like a legal disclaimer.
Right.
Which is like the tickets are
You're
yours.
signing this, yeah.
I'm not
Not
responsible
my
for your
problem.
shit. Please don't speed. Don't speed. Like obviously, okay, we're really, you know, that's when you're like, okay, the waivers are out the door. But what's like the methodology for like indoctrinating somebody into a rally with like appropriate etiquette? Does it just self-police, or is it something that you kind of like make happen?
Yes. It's honestly, I try and do what I can to, during my drivers meetings, give brief examples of like, if you're driving with a group and, you know, there's a small gap, don't cut the gap and drive away like a dickhead. I mean, I say this more professionally and publicly.
You don't
but,
even have to though. Like that's the thing. That's the group you're in. Like
right. So like, don't cut the gap and go. Like usually
Yeah.
the first person, cut the gap and then slow down. Let the entire group that you're driving with cut you in front of you so you can stay together, you know? So I give brief examples of like that, but it's a lot of self-policing to your point. Like I think it also sometimes comes off better if, you know, I'm the one in charge, but Timmy yells at Tommy and is like, hey dude, like that was stupid. Like next time do this. That usually goes off better than me yelling at Tommy or whatever I said.
Yeah. What's like the future of these things? Like you've been at this for a while now.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
how many of these have you put on?
So my first one by myself out here, my first East Coast run was 2018. So 18, 19, 20, 21, I did 2. 23, I did 1 big one. 24, I did 4. So 10,
That's a lot,
give or take.
but
Plus a couple of random ones, probably a dozen.
okay. But like, so, I mean, I imagine that takes a lot of time and planning and all this
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But is that your only gig? I mean, what you've got a little bit of entrepreneurship in you. Like what takes up the rest of your
Yeah, so
your energy.
So when I was running Just Squad Driven, to your point, I was running I was doing the rallies, but I was also doing it as a marketing arm. So like I would help other local automotive mostly related companies with, sometimes they needed a website built or social media run or content created or, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that would, I'd scrap together some money that way. I created this kind of cool thing I thought called The List, which was like a directory for car people on my website. So like I would vet shops like PPF shops, detail shops, auto body shops, whatever. So like if you trust, or the average enthusiast hopefully would trust, Squad Driven, it's this cool brand, whatever. And I'm looking to get PPF done. Where can I get it done? Right. So they'll message us, or they would go right on our website, and it would be like, here's a shop that we've used and recommend. And then they would contact them directly and be like, thank you so much. Like I didn't have to worry if I was going to get screwed by this shitty shop. I knew that was a good shop. And then I would also I do a few things, but now, last year in 2024, I acquired Crown Rally, which is the company I interned for, I don't know, 10 years ago almost.
When you say this, it like blows my mind, because
Blows my mind.
I like didn't. All right, this made me feel really dumb. But when you were like, I acquired Crown Rally, I'm like, how do you acquire that? Like, it's like sometimes you forget like these are like actual businesses.
Somehow it's weird.
And
but
it's like really strange to me.
Yep.
And I'm just like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So, but it's weird. Like, so literally, like, I bought the company because it was the previous owner and I have been friends I interned for him in 2015, 16. I worked for a couple years after that, and then we parted ways. I had to graduate school, then I moved to the East Coast, and we were still good friends. I would come back and, half volunteer, half kind of screw around on the rallies for a couple years. And then, we kind of like started doing our own things. Kind of to your point, I was getting a little frustrated with, Squad Driven was a ton of fun. I love doing the rallies. I love doing all this, but it's a shitload of work, and I was not making money. No matter what other people think.
well, no, because the thing is, you look at you can look at the cost of a rally and say, wow, that's a lot of money. And it's like, okay, well, you figure out how to put yourself in like a 5-star hotel with like catered meals and like certain events and things happening. It's like, it goes away quickly.
People don't realize the costs of things, though. I've had people who like think they're calculating the cost of the rally, and they're like, listen, I know how much money you're making because literally, like, dinner costs like $25 a person. I'm not even joking.
I spent $22 and then tipped another like $3 only because it was like a takeout meal. I'm like, I'll be stingy on a tip on a takeout meal because
fair,
I'm like,
they're not really.
Yeah,
I
got
you.
I'm like, you're not like I don't know. Someone can yell at me and email me about that later if they want to. But don't worry, I tip like at least 20% when I sit down and eat a fucking meal. I'm not a psycho. But anyway, I think I spent like $23 or $24 on a fucking burger and fries that I just brought here and ate. So like that was like, and
People
that was
don't
like,
think.
That's just like a fucking takeout meal. You're not talking about like, here's this buffet of like whatever. And oh, maybe we're going to have like oysters at this meal or whatever. Like that shit adds up.
It's nice food. Yeah. Usually, again, on average, what I tell people, usually 100 to 150 is an average range per person.
Yeah.
Times 2 if it's a car, a rally team. So on average, I'm spending $200 to probably closer to $300 per dinner. Doesn't include lunches. It doesn't include other fees because, again, a lot of times that's the price per dinner, but then there's a rental fee for the venue space.
Yes.
And then there's a food and beverage minimum. So if we don't hit that because it's a smaller group or whatever, I'm spending cash on nothing because they just need a minimum spent.
Yeah, or if you need like audio visual equipment for anything. That, whatever,
chairs,
like everything.
tables.
Yes,
dude, people don't think, and I'm like, listen, it adds up.
It's a fucking wedding every night.
Literally,
like, it's crazy.
Literally,
that's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess who are the clients now? Like, who is the like? Because when you start thinking about this as like, oh, it's a business, we need to like get people in, we need to make this work. What like is it just like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you're like, well, of course, there's car enthusiasts here, they're going to go. But like, what is going to make them do yours versus someone else's? Because they're all almost always associated with a charity at the end of the day too, which does a couple things. One, it's like, oh, I can justify some of this money because, we're doing it for something.
Right.
And two, it sort of washes away some of the sins that you've accrued while driving.
Fair.
There's a piece of that where when you have the little list and you get pulled over and you're like, I'm on a
listen, it's for charity.
But sorry, officer, I'm sorry. I was doing 132 miles an hour.
It's for the kids. It's for the children.
Don't you want to help kids?
Exactly.
Like, yeah. And
it has helped. I'm not even kidding.
No,
that has helped.
It works
on multiple occasions.
And that's the thing. I'm always like trying to figure out like, how much of this do I want to admit? Like in terms of like, because that is a lot of what we do in the car world. And it's not just rally. I mean, anything we do is always, we try to like associate with like, this one's a charity for cops for kids, right? And like, oh, well, we had a fucking nice police escort up 95 to wherever we were going. And I'm like, I just did 150 by a cop. And I've done that. I've done that with an escort. And they've gotten a fucking high five afterwards, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that's the thing. It's like, what is the, what, I don't know how much you can talk about this, but like, what are the nuances of just making this work in a way that like is socially acceptable? Because no matter what, the second year, dude, I'll get yelled. If I'm driving a fucking Porsche GT3 RS on a video and I do 75 and a 65, there's gonna be someone who's like, oh my God, you're putting this on the
breaking
internet?
the law.
I'm like, bro,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? So how do you sanitize this in a way
Sure.
that like, because most people just don't get it. And I'm not so clueless that I don't believe there's no danger involved. Of course there is, but there is a level where it's like, well, this is kind of just like an enthusiast pastime. This is what people do. And to some extent, you'll be able to police it a little bit, but like, how do you sanitize the image of some of these things to make it work for like the masses?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Because it's not just what happens on the rally doesn't stay on the rally.
Right,
It's going
right.
into the marketing materials. It's going out there. Like people are going to see this because you're enticing other people. You're building the brand. So I find this difficult for automotive YouTubers too, because we're always walking that line between like, well, yeah, I'm going a little fast, but I'm not like going 200.
Right. Or like cutting people off.
I'm not cutting
or
people
going on
off.
the shoulder or whatever.
I'd like to think all the driving I show on the internet is like pretty savory and fine. But how do you sanitize some of the stuff that like someone like, you know, average people are just like speeding, you know, they equate it to drunk driving.
Right,
It just
right,
isn't
right.
the same thing.
Right. So the way essentially I'll sanitize it for that word. That's a good use. Like I'm thinking about it. It makes sense. For any marketing materials, for example, like the two things I mainly think about are like speedometers and double yellows. Like there are times where, again, I'm not saying I condone this, but like hypothetically, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you slow down, people don't realize this. A lot of times if you do see a picture of cars on the other side of double yellows or together or like a bunch of cars side by side, like usually they slow down to some very slow speed that like
Yes.
pisses people off because they're going too slow. They're not doing that at 100 miles an hour.
No.
But people don't realize that. And again, like I've had videos and pictures which I've had to edit or not use because like, you know, in a photo, there'll be someone crossing a double yellow, or sorry, there'll be someone crossing a double yellow. It'll look like it was crossing a double yellow, but like 10 feet before that, it was hash marks.
Yes. Yep.
So like they were on the other side, maybe a little bit longer than they legally should have been. But like if I post that shit, people are gonna be like, "You drive on the wrong side of the road. You're dangerous." Like da 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 da. So
And what they're
anything
not
with
seeing
that.
is like that road's probably like straight for like a mile.
Correct. Right.
And you're like, there's nobody.
Right. But again, like you can't explain that to people online because as you know more than anybody, like people are going to take any chance they can to
no
be
matter
like,
what you do.
you're wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a way is anything that you can see someone's speed or see them doing something like double yellows or something illegal like that, I won't post. I've posted photos where like two cars are kind of staggered like side by side and like one of them is like a little bit into the breakdown lane, but like not passing. It's just like they got over a little bit so they could be in the shot. I've posted that. I haven't gotten any shit for it yet, but I'm sure someone would be upset about it.
It sucks though, because you do always have that feeling of like, oh, who's gonna get mad at me for this? And sometimes they're mad at you for a reason that you never even thought of.
You have to like, as someone running a business, like, even you, like, you know, your business and YouTube and
Yes.
whatever, like you have to think like, I'm sure obviously this, you have to also like think, who do I give a shit and who do I not give a shit? But like, no matter what you do, you have to keep in mind as a business owner, like someone can take anything that I'm about to do and spin it in a bad way.
Oh, they will.
You know
They
what I mean?
absolutely will. And the thing is, they'll categorically blame you for something and not someone else.
Right.
When like you're doing this, I've had this with the other YouTubers where like we're on the same trip together, we are doing the exact same thing. I'm literally following someone else, and I'll get fucking screamed at, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what about that guy? And they're like, he's fine. I'm like, what?
What's the difference?
What are we talking about? Like,
Yeah.
and we're like filming the exact same thing. And so like, I'm like, all right, look, because the thing is, and you can't deny it because you're like, well, yeah, I mean, that is what it is. But like, there are just this like sort of like tacit agreements. Like, well, look, you're like, what do you think is going to happen when you give me that car?
Right.
Like, that's where we're at.
Right.
And,
I
you know,
had to do it one time, you know?
right. And you're always walking that line where people are going to be like, oh, this asshole drives like my grandmother. And I'm like, I'm sorry,
I'm either
not
going too slow, I'm going too fast. There's
Yeah.
no Goldilocks. You
like,
know?
I'm sorry, I'm driving a Countach on 25-year-old tires and it's 17
30
degrees
yeah,
Fahrenheit.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, I'm sorry I didn't like chuck it into a corner.
Yep.
But I gave you a few red line to red line to red lines. So just be happy with what you ended up with.
Right,
'cause
right.
You didn't have this before I gave it to you.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, what is the future of these rallies look like to you? Like, what do you seem like someone who's always thinking ahead and like trying to make like something improved or better. Like what we know what the rallies of like your look like. We know what like a ridiculous $100,000 transcontinental gumball rally looks like. What does like a rally for like a normal person in America who's just trying to have a good time, not kill anybody, but like make some, a lot of these people need fucking friends. This is the thing. People join these rallies and they stay with them because it's like a loyal group of friends because we're all like these sick fucks who can't exist in the real world.
Right, right.
So we have to
You
have
like
this.
cars?
Yeah, they're like,
I like cars.
This is the thing. We're all like Burning Man people, basically. We're all burners. And like the burner thing is like, you go to Burning Man and they say, welcome home. Like that's kind of what these rallies end up
Honestly,
being.
yes, you're not wrong.
What? How do you make them better? How do you change them? How do you make them feel more relaxed for you as an owner? Like as a participant, someone's like, "Oh my god, I don't want the liability of that." How do you try to like make things better for yourself?
So something honestly that like was a natural progression that kind of was from a gamble of sorts. With Squad Driven, I tested this theory. I forget if it was 2023 or 2024. No, it was 2023. I tested this theory of, a typical rally formula is you're going from city to city to city, wake up early, drive, stay up late, repeat, right? My thing that I tested out in 2023 was, I kind of call it like the hub and spoke model. So like we go to one place for 3 or 4 nights and each day is a different activity or a different direction, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
like you're going somewhere and it's more relaxing. I mean, it's still a lot of work, but like for me,
But you don't have to unpack and pack every
you can
day.
leave your shit out.
Oh my god!
As an organizer, I'm only dealing with one lodging situation.
Holy shit!
And then, it's relatively, for example, like in 2024, we had 3 rallies of that style and then 1 of the traditional A to B to C. The 3 rallies of that style were, we went to the White Mountains for one, we went to Lake Placid for one, Lake Placid, New York, and then we went to Toronto for one. So it was more relaxing for me because, it's to your point, like I don't have to worry about getting up earlier than everyone to pack all my stuff and then be up first and whatever. I mean, I still did, but I didn't have to pack.
Well, not to mention, you have to kind of like you have to have, if it's not you have to have someone on your team beating everyone to
Right,
the
correct.
location because
Right.
they have to get shit set up.
Right. So I need less staff because to your point, like normally with the A to B to C, like I need a staff team that's going to be at lunch. I need a different staff team that's going to beat us all to the end destination for parking and whatever.
Plus the media team.
Plus media team. Right. So like it's much more manageable to have those types of events. And I think that to answer your question of like maybe the future of rallying or easier for me, I want to keep, so since I acquired Crown last year, Crown is always A to B to C.
Sure.
All over the country. It's nationwide. So there's, Denver to Vegas is our first one. And then we have Rapid City or the Black Hills to Yellowstone.
Okay.
So Rapid City to Bozeman. Then we're doing an East Coast one, which was, I essentially turned my East Coast run A to B to C rally into the Crown Rally East. And then South, we're going through, which some people don't call the South, but like the Ozarks.
Okay. Yeah.
So that I'm going to keep Crown Rally like the A to B to C model. And then my Squad Driven people, I literally just came from dinner with a Squad Driven guy who was like, are we getting a squad rally this year? Because like the vibe is different and again, not better, not worse, but it's more chill. So they love it's usually shorter, 3 or 4 days, the hub and spoke model. So we're all going to one place, unpack your stuff and, have 3 or 4 days with friends and explore and hang out. And it's way more relaxed. So like, Toronto, for example, day 1, we went down by Niagara. It was shitty weather and way too much traffic. So we didn't get to park, but like day 1 was down by Niagara. And then I think day 1, we also had dinner at the Haggerty Garage. They have a really, really cool garage and social in Toronto. And then day 2, we went like in a complete opposite direction. And we went to these like super bougie, like mansion hilly area, like north of the city.
Yeah.
And that was the second day. And then the third day was a track day. So it was kind of like, and we might have actually, I might be missing a day, but you get the concept.
Sure.
One day here, one day here, one day here. We love to incorporate track events when possible, just because a lot of people that come on our rallies, like there's probably a minority that are actually track
people,
rats. Yeah, but like,
but everyone wants to experience it. Even
they
if
want
they're
to try it,
dude,
like
people,
in a chill setting with your friends, right? You don't want the pressure of randos, like, go faster or whatever.
The amount of people that will come out, like even at just Palmer, if you were like, we're gonna do parade laps, right? Like, I'm in. Yeah. Like they just want
to try it out,
because I get that. Like before I started like track driving, I'm like, ooh, I just want to walk on it. I just want to see it. I just want to know, because like most of the fear of track driving isn't driving. It's like etiquette. It's like, am
I gonna piss someone off or hit someone? Or
that's really my whole deal. Like most of my anxiety just comes from not wanting to get yelled at. Like that's fair. That's really all I'm trying to do most of the day.
That's fair. That's fair.
Like it's tough. What about you? Like when did you become like a car nerd? Were you always a car nerd?
I kind of started low key being a car enthusiast, not quite a nerd yet. I hadn't evolved into a nerd yet. My uncle used to take me and my cousin to these, like, when I was young in his, he had a 1965, he still has it. Now it's not in great shape, but he still has it. 1965 Buick Riviera. So it was kind of like a muscle boat sort of. And he'd take me and my cousin like on the weekends, just literally like cruising in the Rivi, he called it. And like we go cruising and we go to these like, the car meets. It wasn't really a meet, but like we would call it a meet, but it was like a bunch of old people with muscle cars in a ice cream.
It's a cruise night.
Yes, literally a cruise night.
Yeah. The smell of cigars, the sound
old
of
people, muscle
hot
cars,
rod Lincoln, and
like a soft serve ice cream.
Yeah,
cone.
yeah.
Oh, like that was childhood.
That was my childhood, 100%. Like my dad brought me to those things all the time, and we weren't like my dad had a Corvette, but the Corvette never ran.
Okay,
so we just went and like would go and
told
see
people about it.
Well, his friends all had cars,
right?
So what I grew up getting hell rides by fucking psychos he went to high school with in their like Cobras or their I guess a lot of there was like GT 500s, there was like AC Cobra 427 Cobras, there was even the modern cars of the day, like a 3000 GT.
Ooh, yeah,
I remember being forced, the owner of that car made me take my shoes off, and I remember
that's a little much.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't like this guy anymore.
Yeah.
He used to be like he seemed like a cool uncle figure to me because he had like a PlayStation, and like we'd go to his house and my dad and him would like drink beers while I just like played like Gran Turismo or whatever. Sure. And then the moment I got into his car and he made me take my shoes off, I was like, I no longer want to be part of this. Like, I used to envy like this life that you were living, and now I'm like, you're gross. Like this is fucking pathetic. And I'm trying to think what other cars. There was a lot of really wild cars that there was a built Chevelle. This guy that did the forms for my parents put an addition on the house when I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12. And the guy who did the forms for the foundation, this guy, Jeff had I think it was a 70 Chevelle that he had this built motor that made like 600 horsepower, and it had a sequential gearbox in it. And he took us for a ride. It was like me, my dad, and like a childhood friend, because they're like, yeah, get in the car. Now Jeff, like basically like shirtless, just like this dude in work boots, like covered in cement.
There's no seatbelts. Hold on.
Yeah, we go out and he takes us like 130 miles an hour sideways in this fucking thing, leaves a patch of rubber like 300 feet up my street, which I was like, this is the shit. Yes, this. And my mother's like,
I need it.
The neighbors hate us. Like, what the fuck? But like, I just always grew up in like an atmosphere where if there was a car, I was going to get in it.
Yeah.
I needed to be part of it. It was always there. So like, I totally relate to the whole like, we went to the cruise nights. We did it because it was the only thing that mattered.
Right.
To me.
On the weekends, it's like, what do you want to do? I want to go with my uncle and my cousin, get ice cream, go in the Rivi and just cruise.
When did it come to a point where you were like, I need to buy something that's like an enthusiast vehicle? Because I'd imagine like, if you're just like interning at this place and you're kind of starting to get, was that where you sort of discovered like, oh shit, this world of this?
Sort of. That was where I got like into the higher end car world. But like right after my like nerdiness, I suppose, started to, evolve. When I was in middle school, I moved to New Jersey, and I think it was complete coincidence, but the kids that I became friends with, on the weekends, instead of, we played a lot of video games, but on the weekends, instead of like going to, I don't know, parties or whatever middle school kids, I don't remember what I did in middle school. We'd go with my friends' dads and like take one had like I think a 280Z or a 300Z, and the other one had like a Mustang, an old Mustang.
These are perfect dad cars.
But like manuals. Yeah. And then we would like go to the parking lot and like 13, 14-year-old kids just like stalling the shit out of these cars in parking lots and learning how to drive.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of like where the evolution became. But then when I interned for Crown, that was when I took I had a Nissan Xterra at the time. That was like my first kind of. I had
Was
a
it
Honda-
yellow? Was it yellow?
No. It was
Damn
gray. It was gray. I liked it.
No, those things are those, dude. I still see them around. If
are-
they didn't rust away,
Yep.
they last. Like those are like some of the most reliable in terms of like mechanical shit. It's incredible. Everyone I knew had like 250,000 miles on those things.
Yeah, they're solid. And that was kind of my first like big boy car, sort of. I mean, I was in college, but
No, that's
my first actual purchase
Yeah.
of like, I don't know, $20,000, whatever it was.
a
Maybe
lot of-
$18,000.
That's a shitload of money.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. And I was like, okay, like my first car loan, sure. And then I did start interning for Crown, and then I was like, oh shit, like I need a fun car. Like I can't have a Nissan Xterra and be involved with these rally people. And then at that time, I got my I traded in the Xterra literally like I think 7 months after I bought it.
Ooh, okay.
I think I probably lost a few $1,000s, but like
That's
at
not
the
bad.
time I didn't care. I rolled it into my next loan, right? I was like,
Absolutely.
yeah, poor choices. That's fine.
Whatever.
Into a narrow body 2009 WRX manual.
Okay.
So that was like my first manual car that I owned.
That's a proper enthusiast vehicle.
Yeah.
Like, well, it gets you in the
For a college
door.
kid, yeah.
It
It's
gets
a
you in the door.
manual. It's
Yeah.
like kind of enthusiast car. People look at it and like, okay, like he likes
Well,
cars.
It tells the story.
Right.
You're like, okay,
It's not an
that's-
Xterra, you know,
right.
like it is a sports car.
If you buy
kind
a
of.
Corolla, they're like, well, you just need a transportation.
Exactly.
But if you have a manual,
Right.
you know, WRX, they're like, oh, this guy, they people get it.
Right.
There are certain cars that just immediately signal your intent.
Right, exactly. Like you like cars. Like I can talk to you about cars.
100%.
Yes.
So from there, what?
Well, from there, then I started working for Crown for like another year after that. And then I was like, shit, like I can't have this WRX if everyone on Crown has like, you know, Porsches and Mercedes and
That's-
Ferraris and
dude.
Lamborghinis and whatever.
You're telling like the financial downfall of like all of the kids in the car world. Where I'm like, don't just keep your fucking Subaru.
I was
like,
an idiot in college. Dude, I was in college. I'm dying. Hold on.
No, it's totally fair. It's January. Everybody is sick. Everybody's
I'm getting
just
over a cold.
Yeah. Everybody
I'm
is
good
just
now, but-
perpetually like a shit show. It's just whatever.
I'm alive.
This is New England.
Yeah, for real. No, so I had the WRX, and again, it was down that slippery slope of like, I need a nicer car, you know, whatever. So I
Doesn't
traded
it
it.
suck that you have to feel self-conscious about that though? Doesn't it suck that like you had what was objectively a perfectly fine
Oh,
automobile?
for an 18, 19-year-old kid, it was totally fine.
It's like fucking perfect. And
It was
you're
totally
like,
fine.
oh, but I need a fucking 911. Like, oh
Right,
God.
right.
Like that sucks.
So
So, if
I-
you're listening, just keep your fucking
yeah,
Subaru.
keep your car. Again, in hindsight, keep the Subaru.
I'm not saying what you did was wrong. I'm just
Keep
saying
the
this.
car.
You're describing like the I know what this pressure
Oh,
feels
yeah.
like.
Oh, yeah.
I've overcome it. I'm like, I don't give a shit anymore.
Right. Oh, now, no. But I'm saying back in the day, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was a college
No,
kid
no.
trying to hang out with
It
these fucking
takes-
rich people.
You have to age out of it though. You have to realize you're like, oh, I can drive my Honda faster than that guy
Nobody
can drive
cares.
his GT3.
right. Literally though. Literally.
So all right, so what was the big like, oh, Ace is one of the dudes now.
Well,
What was
I
the-
thought my B8 Audi S4 was my you know, I'm the shit now. That was
Yeah.
my next car up. Which again, hindsight, it's fine. It's a commuter car that's very nice, and it's a sporty commuter car.
No, but when you're like 19, 20, that's like it might as well be a Ferrari.
right. Literally.
I mean, this is the thing. Like, my dream was like my E39 M5, and like when I bought that car, trust me, I felt like a boss.
Yeah.
I was like,
you hear the supercharger whine on the S4. Not the
yeah.
M5.
No, but you're just like, oh, it's not a regular Audi.
Right.
You know
It's
what I
not
mean?
an
Like,
A4.
yeah, you know exactly.
S4.
It's a big deal.
Right.
It totally adds up. All right.
That was the next step in the evolution. And then after that, I kind of do you know a lot about the Audi platform, like the B8?
A little
S4
bit,
platform?
yeah.
So like at the time, the most you could do to those cars was a single pulley. So now you can do dual pulley, all kinds of other stuff, and get like 600 plus horsepower.
Yeah.
But like when I was in there, it was like the most you could do, like the pulley, the supercharger pulley, and I don't know, the crank pulley might have just came out, but it was still like not really tested well, and people would blow up their cars and whatever. So I was like kind of maxed out on power, and I was like, ooh, I want something manual again because it was a DSG, and I want something faster.
Yeah.
Because I was continuing to rally and whatever. So I traded that in, and I got a S550 Mustang GT.
Oh, okay. So you wanted to die.
Yep. And I was like, it's an S550. There's not really the memes about that. It's usually the older Mustangs that are, hitting people until, that Mustang was around long enough and got cheap enough that idiots started buying the S550, and then it became the new meme car.
Yep.
So then I modded the shit out of that, and then same concept. Actually, no, different concept. I modded it. It was great. I loved it for a few years. I'd have another one. It was a great car, honestly. I redid all the suspension, so not your typical like drag race muscle car. Like I made it so it handled well.
Yes, and that's what they need.
Right.
They need a little
100%.
attention. They
Right.
need because they're kind of soft. They like that's the problem with those Mustangs, like especially today, they're even worse today. But like they always had such light steering with very little feedback.
With no suspension mods, correct?
And
like stock, yeah. It's
and
like
and it was like and back in the day when they had solid rear axles, they would step out and you would like accidentally overcorrect or like, so I was like every time I drive one of those cars, I'm like, oh, that's why everyone wrecks these.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
And-
literally.
And the car isn't telling you much.
Right,
It's like whispering, like
do it.
but it's like you're like, whoa, and then it's like you should counter steer.
Oh yeah. And then by the time you hear it, it's too late.
Yeah, so it's like you have to really be in tune with
Right.
what's going on while this blaring insanity is occurring behind you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always apparent when. But then now the car that I think I associate you most with is the R8.
Yeah, so I started getting into the rental business. I was with at the time a business partner, and all of a sudden this guy, he essentially had the money in the cars, but not the time to manage a business. And we kind of partnered that way. Like I would run the business, and I did all the branding, and I did everything, and like I just use his cars as my rental cars, right? Mostly on Turo or off Turo, Friends, the car network, and we had a couple C8s. We had a V8 R8 Gen 1. We had a manual 996 Porsche Turbo that was like stupid built. Literally like 700 horsepower, something stupid. It was awesome.
It's all like horrifying cars to be like, yeah, go for it, Johnny. You
was-
paid me the $300, so off you go.
Good luck. No, so at the time, again, I was like, listen, like maybe it makes sense because I have access to all these cool cars. Like I'll sell my Mustang and I will just drive the rentals and like I'll save money. I'll be smart. This was March of 20, whatever. I don't know, March.
It's always a wheeler dealer thing happening. I love it.
Yeah, I was like, this is March. I'll drive the rentals. It's fine. I sold my car to a local woman car enthusiast out of state. She's awesome. We still are, we were friends on Facebook, and then she hit me up when I was listing it, and she's just over the border in Connecticut.
Okay.
And part of me had to get rid of the car anyways because I got flagged for inspection because it was tuned.
At some point, you're like, I give up.
So I had to go. They were like, you have to unmod your car. You have to take it to the state inspection
Max
state.
Center.
Yep.
Fuck.
But someone who called me, like typically you assume like, again, wrong to assume, but you're just like cops and the state people, they have no idea about tuning cars and like whatever. Right. So the guy who called me was from the state or from somewhere. And he's like, hey, so I saw your car got flagged for inspection. Like, like, does it have a cold air intake? Is it tuned? Is it this, and this? Does it have downpipes? And I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
So-
they're fully aware because I remember, like, I won't say the name of the tuning shop, but I remember there's a tuning shop that I know pretty well, and when the EPA would come to them and like basically be like, what's the word? Like not a phantom shopper, a secret shopper. They'd basically come.
like asking them to like,
And they're like, hey, can you do this to my like Volkswagen diesel? Can you do this? Can you do that? And they're like, we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that. And that's like, they can tell, like, but the thing is, this is how all these fuckers get like blown up because they're just like, you're pulling cats out of things. You're going around like the DEF systems of these diesels. You're doing all this shit. And it's like, they fucking know, and fucking guaranteed the people who are running like these departments, it's just like if you were like FBI fraud division, you're pulling guys who used to pull shit. Right. So like,
100%.
I bet there's some motherfucking like hardcore insider tuners who were like the most egregious offenders. And they're the ones who are now wearing the suits to work.
Absolutely.
Like looking for all the details. They know all the workarounds. Yeah. They're like, buddy, I am you.
Right.
Every time. Yeah, that's the thing. Everyone's like, oh, the government's so fucking stupid. I'm like, the government's smart enough to remove jail time for this guy if he works for them.
Right.
Trust me, They know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah. Yep. That was bad. So luckily she was just over the border, so she didn't care. Like it was a mass inspection.
Sure.
This is probably March, and again by June, I think it'd be a great idea for me to buy a car that I can drive and rent out.
Yeah. And
Dun dun dun. Audi R8.
yeah. But that's a good car, and it's also it's great value for money. I think you get,
Dude, awesome. Best like quote unquote entry level supercar, right?
absolutely, because you get the full like supercar appearance. When you drive it for the first time, you're like, oh my God. And then you drive it regularly, like R8s are fucking easy. They're like chill.
Yeah.
They're like they're like, you forget you're not in A4.
Right.
Like that. And then every time I have that feeling, I'm like, this is perfect. Like this is, to me, I think, that and this is such a weird car to compare it to, the BMW M1, like the OG, like 79, 80, whatever, like
sure.
M1. That is basically the original R8. Because that car is like,
just with the concept of like, you can kind of daily it, but also
it's super soft. It's super chill. It's really easy to drive. And then when you need it to be a supercar, it's a screaming banshee motherfucker and it looks the part, but like, it's so wild. And like, this is a car that's not some big fancy, like dynamic adaptive suspension thing either. Like it does a little bit, but it's not like Bentleys today. You're getting a brand new Continental GT. When you go from comfort mode to like whatever its firmest mode is, the delta between how soft and how rigid it gets is like unlike any other vehicle.
Interesting.
You can't believe what these cars do. Like it's nuts. And I think the R8 is one of those cars that's like, it doesn't even do that. It doesn't really like get like much softer or much firmer. It's it's a small delta, but like somehow it's just the perfect daily driven supercar. And
I love
it's
it.
Like amazing. It works so much, and it's so much easier to like get in and out of, look out of than like the Lamborghini equivalent, which costs twice as much money
for the same engine.
And you're like getting the same thing because yours it's a 5.2 liter.
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the
which literally on the block I've seen. There's a Lamborghini badge right next to the Audi badge.
It's all the same shit.
Same thing.
I mean, it's fucking great. That car's so perfect. And yours is a stick, isn't it?
Luckily, not luckily. Unfortunately, mine is not the stick.
I don't know why I thought you had a stick. But either way, I mean, they're still fucking raucous. And you can, that's the thing.
I've grown to love the Artronic. A lot of people hate it, but like I've grown to love it. You have to like, it sounds so stupid, but you probably understand. You have to know how to drive it. And then it's fun, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think like, that's the thing. Like there's an LFA down there that people always, every time someone drives an LFA, they're like, what a fucking nightmare gearbox. I'm like, kinda, yeah. But
I'm semi-ignorant. Is this single clutch as well?
Yeah, it's a single clutch, and it is like the downshifts are raucous. The downshifts are like bang.
Right.
The upshifts, you are like, well, you better be ready for what's about to
like delayed. Like the R8's the same. You kind of like your head.
You can make choices depending on how like nauseous your passenger might get. Like you can lift a little bit to smooth it out.
Right.
But if you're just going for it, you just fucking sound dead. Yeah. There's a big delta in terms of like terrible single clutches to decent ones, and then the dual clutches and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean the R8. Ugh, perfect. And also, I don't think you'll lose you won't lose much on that car. Like
I will, but the only reason I will is because I drive the shit out of it. So I'm at 92,000 miles.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So I drive it a lot. But again, knock on wood, it's bulletproof. And Farley, Eurotech, shout out. Like,
dude,
if I didn't have him, dude, I would not still be in this car.
You're carrying on the tradition of him getting mentioned on like every episode.
Oh, really?
No, he's amazing. I literally said on like my last podcast, I'm like, Farley is the only reason that like most people around here can even think about owning a car like
yes. He knows what's wrong. He will not bend you over on price. He does good work and it's affordable.
And he'll call you and do the thing where he goes, okay, look, here's 10 things. You need 3 of them.
Right.
And you're like, ugh, okay, do the 3 and maybe number 6.
Right, correct. Exactly. But I've heard stories like from people who wanted to bring, this one guy brought his McLaren 570. I want big turbos. I want this, and this. And Farley literally was like, dude, you don't want that. He's like, you'll blow your car up. And then that engine, do you want to spend, I don't know what a McLaren engine is. It's not cheap.
It's probably
50 grand,
60 grand, 70 grand.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so he's like, dude, don't do that. Like just downpipes and a tune or whatever. I forget what he said. But, he was just like, here's something that'll be very fun. Just do that. And like, yeah, I could take your 10, 20, 30. Well, I don't know how much it is to, bigger turbos.
He could probably take whatever the fuck you want.
Right. But like, he literally told the guy, no. He's like, listen, I suggest you don't do that.
Yeah.
Which again is more respectable than like, a shop who's like, yes, give me your money. And then, 6 weeks later, your car's blown up.
Absolutely. No, it's tricky. So, all right. So you've been at this for a while now. Like, I don't know. I don't know how else to ask this question. Like, are you happy? What's going on? Like, how are you? Like, are you?
Thank you for asking.
Is this what you like? I don't even know how to ask this question. Is this what you want to be doing? Is this how you want to be doing it? Is there things that you want to change? Are you getting enough out of it? Like personally, do you feel overworked? Like what's going on?
Thank you for asking. I would say yes to all of the above.
Okay.
So I love what I do. Part of the reason and I don't know, I think I might have talked about this on another podcast potentially, but part of the reason the Crown thing came about was I approached Justin, the previous owner of Crown, burnt out. Hey, I've been doing this squad thing for years. I'm, floating by barely, but like the amount of work I'm putting into this and I'm not making money, like I'm tired.
Yeah. It's hard to keep putting a dollar in the slot and making $1.25.
Right.
At best.
Maybe.
At best.
Maybe. Some days you're making 50 cents.
Yeah, sometimes you just lose the dollar.
Right. Or just lose the dollar. Yeah.
Especially because the whole air of these types of things is joy, affluence, like kind of enjoying yourself with like liberated, reckless abandon. And like, you're like, oh, like, how do I have that vibe when I feel fucked?
Right. It's tough, man. I mean, again, it's not fake it till you make it, but like I have to figure out that balance of like, I need to sometimes force myself to shut my brain off and watch movies for an entire day. That's rare that I can actually succeed at that. But like, I'm on all the time because, running your own business, especially in this world, like I have people texting me today about shipping their car out for a rally in 6 months. So like, 24/7, 365, I'm dealing with something rally related.
Yes.
But again, like I try and focus on the positive sides of it. Like I get to stay in a lot of really nice hotels, eat a lot of really nice meals, see a lot of really cool cities, do a lot of really cool shit. So it's a balance. And I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So I'm working on managing that exhaustion. It's definitely an exhausting business. I can't see myself doing something else. I mean, maybe more leaning into the marketing arm, but like
you basically are a PR guy at this
PR
point.
guy, marketing company,
Yeah.
Like a lot of within rallying, and I don't want to go too much into it, but like it's a melting pot, or not a melting pot. It's a great network for like businesses, right? So like a lot of people,
you're always pulling in sponsors and stuff too.
Exactly, but also like a lot of our clientele, especially Crown, is business owners, right?
Yeah.
So you hypothetically, if you own a detail shop, right? And then you attend a rally or you get involved, all of a sudden everybody who goes on the rally is going to that detail shop.
Yeah.
Or if you sell cars, or if you are commercial real estate, right? Or there are people like who are in unrelated professions. Like we have people in commercial real estate, and all of a sudden that's who you're going to when you own this chain of Valvolines, and you need, I'm just making something up, but you own this chain of franchises and you need commercial real estate. Like you're going to call that person you met on the rally.
That's true.
So like I'm doing it now and grinding in the hopes of like, I think I'm onto something. I know at this point I'm onto something, and I'm going to put in the work and the effort until I can, I was talking to Justin about this the other day, until I can hire people so I can work on the business, not in the business. I mean, you've heard that age-old saying, right? Like,
well, so this is one of the reasons why like you are still on my follow list of Instagram, is because you're somebody who like the second I follow somebody and I start to see them like posting like really dumb like entrepreneurship memes and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you're not successful and you're an idiot. Whereas like I look at you and I'm like, oh, you're like fucking doing things. Like you're just
trying.
You're always like trying to make whatever you're doing better, but you're also not like, you're not sitting there like, oh, I got a sign from the wind that said like, I'm gonna make money now. Like you're like a real one. You're like a fucking actual person running an actual business.
I try, man. I try.
And it's funny because I think this, especially like the automotive world, when it comes to supercars and stuff, it can get real fake real fast.
Oh, dude, it's bad.
And it's like bizarre.
Bad. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look at all this shit. And then you're just like, oh, that guy's like scamming people. Or like that guy's like just like a obvious piece of shit. Like,
right. But it's funny, like you and I can recognize that, but like the general public a lot of times does not recognize it.
I'll look
you're
at
like,
their,
how do you...
look at the follower count and you're like, these are real. Oh my God. Like, why do 4 million people like fall for this shit? Yeah. Like, why is that? Like, oh, you're gonna pay for that guy's course? He's never done anything but make a course that you paid for. You're the bait. You're it.
Right.
You're his income. He has no other income.
Right.
And like, so that's the thing. That's why like I've always been like, oh, I like this dude because you've always shown up for your business. You're not like relying on people to like fucking.
Nobody's gonna do it for you, man.
No.
When I used to be on back in the day dating apps and all that stuff.
Oh, sure.
And for me,
how do you explain your job to a girl?
dude, don't even get me started. I would just try and not talk about it, or be like, yeah, I do marketing, or like events in the car world, right? But no, like a lot of people. This is kind of related, I swear. My pictures or whatever were on the app were all professional, and it was all from events, and like a lot of people. A lot of girls who I have girls who are friends, and then hypothetically, if I met one of their friends on an app and I went on a date, whatever, they would talk to them about me, kind of thing.
Yep.
And there were multiple occasions where like the girl I went on a date with would talk to the friend who I was friends with prior to the date and be like, this guy looks like kind of a douchebag, like whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
which I get it.
I get it. No, the thing is, in the car world, you're like, oh, cool car. In
Right.
like the real world,
Right.
you're holding a fucking fish.
Right.
I'm
right.
sorry.
Dude,
Like,
literally. And I'm like,
it's like, oh, gross.
right.
This
And then
guy.
they meet me, they're like, all right, he's not that bad. You know, he's not actually a giant douchebag. Most of the time, I hope.
Well, and the other thing is, I think a lot of people see there's two ways to look at automobiles in photographs. One is, oh, this guy like is an enthusiast and a connoisseur, right? So if I have pictures of me in like a Bizzarini 5300 GT, or I'm in like some Ferrari that is like a 72 365, something like kind of classy and cool, that might be looked at as like, oh, this guy like interesting. I wonder what's going on here. Whereas like most people, it's like, oh, I'm posing on my Huracan or whatever. It's like douchebag,
Right.
But you and I can tell the difference between these two things.
Correct. But girls have no idea.
Normal motherfuckers
Right.
do not
True.
have a clue.
True.
Like nobody knows this. So they're just, all they see is flashy car, especially if they see a Ferrari or a Lambo badge or something on it too. Like if you have a picture of me backing up a Countach with the door open, to me, I'm laughing. I'm like, this is the best day. Like I'm not being like, yeah, man, check out my watch.
Right,
Like, I don't fucking care.
You're like, haha, this is awesome.
Yeah, I'm just like this. I'm giggling. I'm
Right.
having the best time. But if there's a picture of me on like a dating app like that, who's this fuck? Right? Like I
Right.
just look like a tool with a Lambo.
Right. I would never post pictures of me in a car, though. That was the thing. Literally, I wouldn't post pictures of me in my R8 or whatever. And on a first date, I would not show up in my sports car,
Can't
R8
do it.
Mustang, whatever it was. I refused to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'll show up. Literally, when I had my Mustang, my daily was a Honda Odyssey. I shit you
Perfect.
not. I would show up to dates in a Honda Odyssey just because I didn't want to be that guy. And I don't know what was worse, honestly, because, whatever.
Well,
A guy in a Honda Odyssey or a guy in a Mustang. I don't know.
this is like the car guy struggle or car person struggle too. Cause like, I mean, I feel bad for the women in this fucking game too, because like oh God, it's like if you felt preyed upon in any other place in your life, you're going to be like,
Oh, in the car world?
oh my God. Oh, she's pretty cool. Did you know Ashley? She's pretty cool. And you're like, oh God, yeah, Ashley knows she's pretty cool. She's fine. She'll tell you if she wants to.
Right.
leave the fucking girl alone.
Yeah, please.
But like, no, it's wild, and it is difficult to like explain to, I guess we'll say normies,
like non-car people,
what
yeah.
we do,
Right.
and why we do it. Because
Wait, you stand in a parking lot and you just talk about each other's cars?
I once had someone ask me, like, they went down the list of like all of my friends and like, and how did you meet him? And how did you meet him? And
Parking
how
lot.
Parking lot.
Parking
every one
lot.
of them.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you a hooker? Like, did you like who's meeting people in parking lots? Like the only time they meet someone in a parking lot is because they like got in an accident.
Right.
So
Right.
we do have a very strange way of having friends. And that's where
Yeah.
these rallies, I think, do bring that collective together where like they don't have like a lot of these people don't necessarily want to go on any other kind of vacation.
Right,
Like, this
right.
is what they want. This is how they want to spend their time. And if their non-car friends are just like, hey, let's go here and do this, you're like, wow, it's going to cost me thousands of dollars. It's not even what I want to do.
Right.
Where like then something like this comes up and you're like, oh, I could meet friends who do these things anyway, and we can have a good time, and I can spend my money where I'd like to spend it.
Right. Right.
And that's why I think like these things still have legs and they have a future.
Right.
I'm always curious about like what the unfortunately it matters, public perception of
Right.
like how these things go off and how
Yeah.
you like manage like any PR disasters or like fucking weird shit that happens, because it just takes like one little, oh God. Before we go, the last thing I'm going to ask you, and then you can hit me with anything if you want.
Sure.
The thing that would worry me the most is like these cars are all like decked out in liveries and stuff. It's like if there's an accident, the photos are all going to have,
Oh, yeah.
like
Instantly.
all of the branding.
Instantly.
And I had a guy who was going to do a cannonball, a friend, he was going to do a cannonball, and he was like, I want to put my business livery on the car. I said, absolutely not. And he was like, no, because
That's
if
not even like that's a fun thing. I mean, it is a fun thing, but that's not like a vacation. You're like, I'm going to break the law
Yeah.
for 25 hours or whatever it is. Like,
and he was like, if I win, all the pictures of this car are going to have my brand on it. And I was like, if you get in an accident, you will be fucked.
right.
Like
or pulled
royally.
over.
Yes.
Or anything.
Just so fucked. And like, you're just going to create hate from people. There's always a reason to be hated.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
but like, there's ways to do it bigger than others.
Right, yeah.
So like, I guess yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what the fucking question was. These are things I think about and worry about for you.
No, I'm worried too. Like I get what you're asking. So you're asking essentially like, how do I deal with or figure out the sponsors with people
Sure,
driving?
just like the PR of it all, and like, you know, if ever there's, you know, even like a fender bender or something where you're just like, oh shit, like now there's like there was a crash in a small town, and now like the newspaper came out and took pictures, and you've got a Charger with like East Coast Rally or run on it. You're like, oh, like, you know, it's just frustrating. You know?
I mean, we've had it happen, and luckily our group, you know, is smart enough that the first time it happened, the group wasn't smart yet, but the first time it happened was on a rally a couple years ago, actually a handful of years ago, 2020 or 2021. We were on the Kank, and some guy in a 1,000 horsepower R35 GTR on corded tires had his 16-year-old son drive.
Oh, good. Put all the money in the right places.
Pouring rain.
Oh my God.
Down the Kank. Long story short, they literally were going slow, and I was around the corner. I didn't see it, but there was a group of people, and these guys were like in the middle of the pack and literally driving, I think the speed limit, literally, because it was raining. Hydroplaned into a tree. And it was a whole big deal. They were fine.
Sure.
You know, a couple scratches from the seatbelt or glass, whatever, but they were fine.
But it's a bad look because when you approach it,
so that car got towed to a tow yard.
Oh no.
Or like a junkyard, tow yard, whatever, but the tow yard was on a busy street.
Perfect.
So they, of course, put the car right next to the busy street.
Of course.
And I was getting messages like, screw you guys. You guys are dangerous. Like literally just anything you can think of. Yeah. You know, because of that. And
well, the appearance, this thing, like the story is told before you get to tell it.
Correct.
Because they're like crash GTR with rally stickers on it. He was doing 130 and killed a family and hit a tree.
Right.
You're like,
but you don't know what happened. Like they were on the speed limit. It was raining, corded tires. Again, poor choice, but still, you know.
Yeah.
But no, so anyways, luckily somehow one of our ralliers knew the owner of that tow yard.
Thank God.
So yeah, so like I had them call the owner and they moved it to like the back of the building.
Perfect.
So it was an issue until they moved it and then it stopped being an issue.
Maybe like a tarp should be part of the rally kit. You know when like
honestly, just in case.
You know when like this happens when if like a super like if a hypercar crashes.
Oh,
like,
they cover it.
Or
Formula One, I think they did.
They'll
that too,
cover
right?
it too. But like that's if you have like let's say like a prototype like Corvette, like let's say the Zora is out for testing. If they crash it, that'll get under a tarp fucking immediately. 2 seconds. Yeah. Maybe you guys need a tarp team.
We do need a tarp team, but after that, luckily, so we had 1.5 more incidents on my squad driven rallies. And people were smart enough that they ripped the stickers off the second it happened.
Yeah.
Like a whole group of people stopped, made sure the person was okay. And then as soon as the person was okay, all the stickers came off.
Perfect.
So yeah, so
that's great. Yeah. I mean, it's that's what I mean. It's just such like a nuanced, weird thing because it's like,
it could happen to anyone, dude. And that's the shitty thing is we have stickers, but it could happen to anyone.
It's true. It's just weird because it's like this thing that's like, it's like this open, this like, this is where it's so weird to me because it's like everyone's so like condemning like any level of speed or enthusiastic driving. And then like there's this all other thing where it's like, no, but we also celebrate it. And like again, this just comes down to me being like, what are people thinking? And it's like, of course, I'm going to be one of the enthusiasts. I'm going to be one of the dudes. But like, what's always going through my head is like, okay, how are we, sometimes.
Who's going to hate us today?
Yeah. Who's going to be pissed that like, okay, maybe we blocked off that intersection for like a little too long. Or
right. Dude, it's bad. We've had, and I know we got to go, but the last thing is we've had like one of the Crown rallies a handful of years ago, shut down, I forget the name of it, some busy street in downtown Chicago, like to get out of Chicago with police escort, like legitimately shut it down. And there were people, like dozens of people commenting on like a TikTok, or I forget where the video was posted, but it was a sick video of like a drone shot of us, they shot down this street, had a police escort. And like, there were dozens of people like, imagine if an ambulance had to get through, I was late for work, fuck you, rich pricks. Like, all of that combined times 30,
of course,
was just like on repeat. Like, but like, we were celebrating for charity. We had, I think the Shriners Motor Brigade or whatever, like
on their little carts and
on their motorcycles or whatever. Like it was a charity thing. And like they shut down a street for probably 15 minutes, maybe.
And everybody died.
And right. And like
Everybody died.
If you would have just believed the comments, like literally someone killed a child.
Well, it's the same idea as like you'll watch like a plane crash video and then the comments will be like, oh, so you filmed it and didn't help them? I'm like, what do you want me to do?
Right,
Like,
I'm not a doctor or a mechanic. Like I can't do anything.
I'm like, a plane crashed in the ocean.
Right.
Oh, let me just go
Let me go swim. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, you're just going to sit there and film it and not doing anything? I'm like, oh my God. It's just, this is the
Do you think people like that are like doing it for a reaction, or they genuinely are that? Like I've seen some of the comments you post on your videos.
I only post the tame ones.
But do you think those are like real? Like people are legitimately like that's how they believe, or they're doing it to be obnoxious?
I really believe that a staggering number of people are like this. And I do understand that, like, for example, I comment on almost nothing. Like I very rarely comment on anything ever because I'm like, ugh. But when people comment, I do think that there's times when I think to comment something and I'm like, oh, why would I'm just in a bad mood. Or this is just this thing that I'm looking at. It's not for me.
Right.
It's not for me.
If you have nothing nice to say.
Yep. And so I'm just going to not be part of it. Right. That's fine. Whereas I think a lot of people, what they do is they just, they forget that they're just staring at a screen and they forget that not everything is for them.
Right. Like they're not talking to you, I think is
right.
Right.
Like, and like maybe just walk the fuck away. Right. Yesterday, I was going home from New Jersey the other day. I was flying home from Newark and I was going through TSA and I was zipper merging into like the line, right? And so I got in and then this lady goes behind me and then this guy tried to cut in front of her. And I listened to this like tiny, aggressive New Jersey woman lecture this man on zipper merging. And while I 100% agreed with her, I chose not to become involved in this because it was heated.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I've had a long day. I don't want to be part of this. And the thing is, it's like, I look at like some dumb shit on the internet. And I'm like, why do I need to be part of this?
Right.
Just go through. Right. Just carry on. Next.
Who cares? Let it be.
Next.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes it's to your benefit. Like once in a while you'll post something and it's like the anger at the thing that I'm posting that like I'll show, for example, I have this video of a Tesla cutting me off in the LFA and like almost fucking crashing going off of a Boston highway right over the Zachem Bridge. And it's like it got like 10 or 15 million views. It was like crazy. But like the comments were like a few things. There's a few people who noticed that there were 3 children in the car.
In the
Tesla.
Yeah.
And so those are the people that I'm like, yep, you get it. Because I'm like, this guy's a fucking psycho. He should have just missed his exit instead of like almost killing everybody in this car and driving off a bridge.
Right.
But everyone, then there's this other sect of it. It's like, fucking autopilot. I'm like, autopilot obviously didn't do this. Like, as much as I hate
fucking EVs.
This is the thing. I'm like, I can't believe you're making me a fucking like Tesla stand right now. But I'm like, it's not their fault. You know, like I'm like, I hate this car. I don't even care. But I'm like, you're a fucking idiot if you think that's what it's doing.
Autopilot.
And like, there's a lot of people who really think that, or they'll be like, he made it. He's a fucking G. This guy's a great driver. I'm like, no, he's the luckiest motherfucker on the planet. What just occurred was not skill. It was luck. And a lot of people can tell the difference between this, but a lot of people can't.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff where you're like, you can't control the narrative and you never know what's going to be the thing. And like, sometimes I'll post a video and I'm thinking, oh, they're going to be mad because I said this about that. Meanwhile, they're mad because they're like, well, I've never seen a 99 Suburban without a tow package. What is that? And I'm like, what the fuck?
Right. Like, where did you get that from?
That in a million years, I didn't think that was going to be the thing that we're going to get angry about. And you just can't control it. So there is a level of just like, let the people do their thing. As long as it's not something that's like ruining your life, then like let it be out there and just see where it goes. Anyway, what do you have any things that we didn't hit that you need to like do and or ask?
No,
or, I don't know.
I was Googling because I have an itch to get an SQ7 and your video came up. Should I get an SQ7?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. It's okay. Like, it's okay. I think, and this is the weird thing. I think there are more entertaining cars for the money. And
I want a sporty SUV, like a decent sized sporty SUV, but I feel like any bigger is not sporty and any like an RSQ8 is smaller.
Yes. Those are
sportier.
psychotic. I just think that there's like a level of charm to like and I know this maybe is not the direction you're going, and it's not something that I would maybe actually put my own money into, but like there's something about like a Durango, an SRT Durango or Grand Cherokee.
Okay.
They are like, whenever one goes by,
Yeah.
you will go, ugh! Like
Fair.
They're so silly. And by the way, people will get the fuck out of your way because they think you're
Cops.
on crack.
Or that, I guess. Yeah.
Nobody driving these cars is like a with it individual.
Right.
You just got out of the mental institution. You stole money and you bought a Grand Cherokee with a V8.
Okay.
Like that's what these are. And I sincerely believe people they're afraid of these like they're afraid of Nissan Altimas.
Oh, yikes.
And there's something about these vehicles that just like cater to a like a carnal fucked up thing that you're like, it just says like I have issues with my parents or something. Like these cars
all
are
right.
like, but like they're fun and they're ridiculous and they're a tantrum every time you drive them.
Okay.
It's just like throwing a fucking tantrum, and they handle pretty good. Like they're actually entertaining. It's no X3M or anything
course.
like that, but
It's big and sporty.
yeah, like just entertain a test drive.
Durango SRT?
A Durango SRT or Hellcat if you can find one. They're harder to find.
They come in the Hellcat, right? Okay.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
That's deranged.
Fair.
And you need to be able to pony up some cash for gas because they're
Oh,
really bad.
Right.
Like mean. Like they hate you. They're just like feed me.
Right.
It's disgusting. But yeah, I think I don't know, those cars, I just think they're entertaining.
Okay.
And it's like it may not be the car to get because they're, fucking like Stellantis products. But they're probably a heck of a lot cheaper than like the Audi, I think.
Because you can get a used like 2020, 2021 SQ7 with low miles for like 40 to 50K.
I bet you could do a little better on the
On the Durango, you
on the
think?
Durango, yeah. Just test it. It's a big car. It is big.
Yeah.
It's a fucking big vehicle. But they're just hysterical. They do silly things. They sound raucous. They have crazy brakes, and it's just hysterical what they can do into
I never
a
thought about
corner.
that, but okay.
Yeah. And I recommend getting the bench seat in the back, not the captain's chairs, because it's much easier to like fold them down and
Fair,
like
okay.
make a flat surface instead of the bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but most of them came that way. Most of them have that. But anyway, just a thought. If you're gonna go,
Appreciate it.
You're
More qualified that you've test driven more cars than I have. So
I it's funny. It's like I don't know that it's like the quote unquote better car, but it's for me certainly the more memorable car.
Got it.
We'll
Okay.
put it that way.
That's fair.
Like I remember every time I drive a Durango SRT, whereas like I've probably driven a dozen SQ7s and been like, oh, okay,
same thing. Okay.
like yeah,
That's
just
fair,
like
that's fair.
they just feel for that. That's like ooh, the RSQ8's the one, but you're
It's
doubling
smaller,
the price.
and it's double the price.
Yeah, and frankly, I think anyone who buys a Urus is insane because of the
RSQ8.
Cayenne Turbo
Or-
GT.
yeah.
That's the car. It's like
That's the same price as a Urus, no?
it's like
Almost?
$100,000 less.
Really?
Yeah.
Aren't they like 200K?
They're 200K.
I guess the Urus new
Urus
is
is like
three.
three. Yeah. So it's like
yeah.
it's like I'm like this is the better car. It's easier. It's faster to drive. It's faster in like every
Just better in
I
every
think it's
way.
faster in every metric. It feels faster in every metric, and it's just like it's honestly hysterically one of the best Porsches, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this thing is ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I've heard good things.
Yeah, those are like fucking crazy.
A little more expensive, but
We're talking
at some point. That's
the dream. But like
Yeah.
for the thing is, I think like I don't know. I think just for the style of the rallies and stuff too. If you had one of these come as a chase car that like someone else drove
What's I'm
for you, or
thinking
whatever,
like as a support vehicle. That's why I was like SQ7, but I guess you're not wrong.
there's something like hysterical about a
Durango SRT?
and you put like some
Yeah.
fucking yellow or orange lights on it and something.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Legal.
It'd be hilarious. Yeah,
Ambers.
You should see some of the lights in the cars in here. Like next time you come, if you come during daytime hours, I can show you around, and there's some.
I've seen the underglow on the LFA. He pulled up to a car meet. I was like, is that?
Yeah, every time I've gone to a night car meet with the LFA, you throw on the underglow, and it's funny because on the internet they're like, "This guy fucking ruined it, piece of shit, what an asshole." I'm like, it's glued onto the car.
Yeah,
like it's not, it's very removable.
Right,
everything on that car like the wheels. If you hate the wheels, great. We have the real wheels.
Right,
Like,
right.
They're actually being
cares?
preserved.
Right.
But like people lose their fucking minds, and it's just like it's just a light.
Right.
People get so angry.
Bring it back.
They think that you've like people will at the same time like and cheer on and share an RWB Porsche that's literally getting hacksawed.
Oh, yeah.
and glued together.
How dare you put lights on
And
your
at the
LFA?
same time, get fucking infuriated that you put that you suction cupped a Uniden to
Right.
to the-
We're defacing the windshield.
Oh my god,
It's the Mona Lisa.
that's not what it's supposed to look like. It's not what the designers had in mind.
So
they freak
bad.
out. So,
So
anyway,
bad.
all the pearl clutching. But all right, that's all I've got. Did we miss anything? Is there something that you?
I think we're good.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, would love to do a whole nother podcast on like where the car world is going.
Yes.
I don't know if you've done that already with someone
We
else.
talk
but
about
like,
it all the time. It's honestly refreshing not to do that today because
fair, that's fair.
I think I've had such a gloom and doom, like, oh my God, we're
going
oh
down.
my God. But the reality is like nothing, all of the people are so funny. They keep commenting. They're like, California CARB just banned all gas and vintage cars. I'm like, that didn't happen. It literally didn't happen. There's a mandate that will definitely not happen in 2035 saying like, okay, any new cars have to be EV or like can't be gasoline or something like that.
Got it.
Like I think California is, yeah. So either way, that does not say you can't drive like the gas car you bought in 2034.
Right.
Do you know
right,
what I'm saying?
right,
Like,
right.
so like these people, like what I'm noticing is just like misinformation or just like misinterpretation and like just idiocy, right? Like idiocy, because I'm like, well, it clearly doesn't say that.
Right.
It absolutely does not say that. Also, when people are like, oh, fucking communist California, they're coming for, I'm like, do you know what the car culture in California looks like? Sure. They want to reduce emissions. They want to make sure their fucking like coastline doesn't eviscerate the shore. They want to make sure they're not getting eviscerated by wildfires, which they currently are. All of this makes sense. But do you really think that California residents are going to be like, I can't drive my Porsche? Never going to happen.
No,
that's
0%.
So like, not to worry, guys. Right. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But that's where the car world's going. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have more DIYers who can like fix cars and keep them running, because I think people are going to be like, oh shit, I can't get what I wanted anymore. And sure, it'll culminate in some like anger and whatever. But the reality is it's like, I think indie shops are going to do really well because they're going to be like, there's going to be people who don't want to drive certain cars that are out, and they're going to have to be like, well, I guess I've got to keep this thing alive for 15 years. Right. So like if you're a Porsche indie shop and there's like hundreds of Caymans in your little region, well, you're going to be working on all those cars.
Right.
And those guys are going to figure out how to do it. Racetracks aren't going away. You think like this is, people just think that like things are going to like in a snap happen like that. Like natural disasters happen in a snap. Commerce doesn't work that way.
Right.
It never works that way. And every time there's some mandate for literally anything, if it looks a little too good to be true, like, oh no, you're going to have to sell EVs by 2035. Like it's going to get pushed because like the car companies are already pretty fucked. Especially American car companies, but when they make EVs, because like we're way behind anyway. China's above us in every fucking metric because they're making EVs for like $15,000. Like, oh, imagine if that was here.
Right.
No, everything would be underwater. But like they are going to get to a point where if like you force them to build these billion-dollar factories and then also nobody's buying the cars, well, at what point are we like, okay, you're going to have to figure this out?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the numbers it'll just get pushed and pushed and pushed. And like something will eventually occur. But I just think that when people think like the end is near, when every guy with a Bible on the street screaming,
They've been saying that for years.
Yeah, buddy, you've been wrong every time. So I don't think this is it.
That's fair.
There will be change, but like I don't think it's quite as horrific. And like, yeah, do I want a 9,000 RPM naturally aspirated Ferrari? Yes. And I can still go get one because they're fucking used. And
as long as it was built before 2035.
They made a bunch of them. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So anyway, that's my take on it. I guess.
Best car scene in the United States.
I guess it's California.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there.
And it's just because they have access to things.
Right.
Like
and it's warm year-round.
Los Angeles is like a bizarro city that shouldn't exist, which is why it's falling apart right
fire,
now.
yeah.
It's because the Palisades were like desert, like it was a tinderbox to begin with. It really, if you were to build that up, you also needed to make sure you had like psychotic fire suppression infrastructure, which to the size it got and the density it got, it's just not a possibility because like the houses became the fuel, right? Like anyway, I'm not like a fucking fire expert, but I'm just like in the 1920s, it was like a fucking desert field. And now it's like, 3 weeks ago, it was just house. Right. Well, if a house burns down, the next one burns down. Right. So, but I think because you can be in downtown LA and into like Angeles Crest, or you could be in like the Malibu Canyons within like 45 minutes.
Yeah, fair.
That's so unique. We don't have that because like you have to make rallies where people make a trip from like basically Boston to Vermont or to the Kank or whatever. Like that's like a 2-3 hour endeavor, and then you're at the road.
Right. Correct. Yeah. Getting out of Boston's never fun.
And it really sucks.
Right.
And it's like not a fun drive out. And even if you have fun up there, the drive back always just kind of blows.
Yeah.
It's like a sad drive.
Traffic slow.
Yeah. The second you get approach that Mass border from New Hampshire, you're like, oh no, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is it. And it's just not fun. So I think like geographics of Los Angeles really play a big part of the car culture, but also like NorCal is great too. Like if you go out to San Francisco and you just go over the Golden Gate Bridge and drive up north a little bit into like Napa, Sonoma, there's amazing roads up there. And there's a culture that supports it. There's like, people aren't mad at you that you came into a restaurant with 20 cars. They're like, cool, the guys are here.
Right,
You know, like
right.
I don't
Business.
get it's hard to get that vibe in New England. But then again, like my vision of good car culture is like twists and turns and views and this and that. Whereas like if you're a twin turbo Viper guy, well, Texas and Florida are pretty fucking good for you. Like you need some straight highway, and if you see like blue lights, you can just continue.
Right, right.
Like we can't do that here.
Right.
There's no way. You're getting arrested. Like it's not happening most of the time.
Yeah. That's fair.
But what about you? What is your like ideal car culture?
I think California, honestly. Yeah.
All
no,
right.
I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if you were going to be like, no, I know a place in the Ozarks.
No. Well, honestly, like, again, I know we're still rambling, but like, you know, the Tennessee area, the Virginia area, like some of the best roads on the East Coast are in that area.
100%.
But I don't think the car scene matches. I mean, I could be wrong, but like,
No.
I feel like it's just not as populated, or I don't know why.
It's
like,
good when you're a transplant dropping in.
Yep.
You do the thing and you get out. You go through the Smokies. You do
Right,
like a
right.
little bit of Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yep.
You do
Blue
Cherry
Ridge Tails, Chirrahalla, yeah.
All that stuff is fantastic. But like it is again. It's just like you have to put in hours of effort
To get there.
Yeah, and
that's
then so it's a vacation. It's not like it's not its own culture. It's just like a thing you go to and then you get out and then you
Disneyland.
remember it and hope for the best. But
Right.
Cool. Well, best of luck on your next rallies.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see what you have in store for your new Crown Rally.
I'm excited.
Where can they find you? Where should they contact you to do these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So crownrally.com or squad-driven.com, depending on which kind of event you like, but check them both out.
Asa, it's been real.
Thank you, Tedward.
All right.
Appreciate it.